All right, we're going to just spend a few minutes looking at mortgages. Mortgages are particularly large loans. Paid over a long period of time. Pretty well exclusively for homes or whatnot. Okay. The amortization period is the amount of time to repay a mortgage. Doesn't sound like anything is different. We're not going to take the time to look at amortization tables. Where you see where your mortgage is at. A banker would show you that if you take a mortgage someday. The very sad part is the first number of years you're pretty well only paying interest, and slowly thereafter you start paying on the principal. Here's the tricky part. Normally with a mortgage, there are exceptions, but normally it is paid monthly. And by Canadian law, rates given yearly. But almost exclusively in Canada, they are compounded semi-annually. Those things don't match. And notice every time we had done a problem before, especially on the graphing calculator, I mentioned to you that the compound periods and the payment periods were the same. They're not normally for a mortgage. So that gives us a little bit of a computational error. If we have 8% per annum, sorry, should have a /A there, compounded semi-annually, we want to convert it to a monthly rate. Now, normally, we would take our interest rate and we would divide it by 2 because it is semi-annual. So, our semi-annual rate would be 4% because we're taking that yearly rate and dividing it into semi-annual rates. To convert that into a monthly rate, it's not as simple as dividing by 6. Because it is compounded semi-annually, we are dealing with 4% semi-annually. End of story. To convert it to monthly, we know that 1 plus I to the power of 6 is 1.04. Our rate semi-annually is 1.04. So our monthly rate comes from this. To get the monthly rate, we are going to take the 6th root of 1.04. Or, if you like powers better on your calculator, it would be to the power of 1/6. That will give you 1.006558197, honest. So your monthly rate is 0.006558197, or about 0.655%. Mrs. Braun buys a home. She needs a mortgage of $139,500. I'm just buying a little mini-me. The bank offers her a 25-year mortgage at 7.5% per annum, compounded semi-annually, as one should see with a mortgage. What is the monthly payment? So first of all, I need to figure out my I value. And for this particular one, we're going to just write her down as a decimal. In order to figure out my monthly rate, I'm going to first of all determine it as a semi-annual rate. So semi-annually, I am taking my 0.075 dividing by 2, which is 0.0375. To determine my monthly rate, 1 plus I, there are 6 months in a semi-annual. If you need to write that, that's fine. So it's always the same thing we're doing, is 1.0375. To find my rate, I take the sixth root of the sixth root of 1.0375 is 1.006154.524. We can't really fit that in there. I, subtracting 1 from both sides, is 0.006155, or approximately 0.6%. Let's figure out our monthly payment. So if I am taking a mortgage, I am taking a present value. It's an annuity, and it's money I want right now to buy my house. So it is a loan, and I have my present value formula, R. 1 take away 1 plus, 1 plus I. My mortgage is $139,500. I want to know my regular monthly payment. 1.006155 to the negative 25 years monthly is 300 payments. It's kind of depressing, really. 0.006155. My monthly payment will be approximately $1,020.52. Let's just look for a second at what the interest is. This is why people, that's a lot of money for a cheap little house. That's why people look very carefully for low interest rates on a mortgage. So the total interest will be, I pay $1,020.52 times 300 payments. I'm paying $306,155.74 for a $139,500 house. So my interest, this should make you sad just a little bit, is $306,155.74, what I pay, subtract the value that I got, $139,500. The interest that I paid is $166,655.74. If you're not careful, you're going to pay as much or more in interest than you get for your mortgage. So the more you can save ahead of time, or the cheaper the interest rate, the better that scenario will work out for you. Let's just do a couple quick more calculations to make sure you're all right with this. If you get a mortgage that is 7.41% compounded semi-annually, and you want to pay monthly, we want to find the monthly rate. So a semi-annual rate of 0.741. Semi-annual rate would be 0.7041 divided by 2. 0.03705. So that's your semi-annual rate. To find the monthly rate, we're taking our semi-annual rate to the power of 6, because there are 6 months in a semi-annual. We are going to take the sixth root of which is 0.0060817. If I take that number, just as an aside, if I take that 0.0060817 and multiply it by 12, I get 0.07298, which is a 7.3-ish% compounded monthly rate. So if the silly bank had given me this information, you can get a mortgage at 7.41% compounded semi-annually, or they could have just told me this is the same thing as 7.3% compounded monthly. It would have saved me a whole lot of trouble. So when they ask us, determine the interest rate compounded monthly that is equivalent to each rate, we're just comparing the two ways of wording things. Generally speaking, however, in Canada, we are given mortgage rates compounded semi-annually. So we're going to have to deal with this little calculation. If you have a semi-annual, you take your yearly, 5.5%, divide it by 2, and that's your semi-annual rate, which is 0.0275. To convert it to monthly, 1.0275 is 1 plus I to the 6 months in a semi-annual, 6th root gives us and so our monthly rate, sorry I flipped sides on you there, is 0.0045316. Or they could have worded it, which is the same as 0.0045316 times 12. Oops, just about wrote in pen on the smartboard. Silly. Is 0.05438. So that would be the same as 5.44% compounded monthly, if the banks were allowed to do that. Can't tell you why, just tell you the how, and now you can work on your mortgage assignment.